Dusty Rhodes and Bruno Sammartino. Who was the bigger legend? Who was the better overall professional wrestler? These are two guys not really known necessarily for their in-ring wrestling. They could work a crowd, and both guys, I think AJ and I talked about this off air, they're the kind of guys that are going to go, you might think everything else on this show was bullshit, but we're going to make you think we're real. AJ and I have both been partial to Dusty. We grew up more with Dusty, but we can look at it objectively. AJ, what do you think when you look about him in-ring wise? Again, neither guy a mat technician.
So this is an interesting one because a lot of times when we try to compare greatest of all time, we can't compare because they're in different generations or it's hard to, they overlapped a lot. You're talking about literally 12 years of overlapping. Obviously, Bruno was heading towards the end of his career. Dusty was heading into his prime, but you have a lot of overlapping there. It's easy to say Bruno because of the championship and because of how long he held it. We just talked about the fact he is the longest reigning champion of all time. However, a lot of that is due to the politics of being an Italian wrestler in a New York market, and Dusty was a legitimate world champion, even though there were 3 short reigns. You're talking about somebody who literally was traveling all over the world defending his title. Bruno basically defended in Pittsburgh, New York, Philadelphia, in the Northeast. So you can almost say one is a real world's champion and one is the ECW world's champion.
Now, that's an interesting analogy. Now, I have done Bruno comparisons before online, and I've not a lot, but enough people have told me that any true historian is going to tell you Bruno was the biggest legend because of all the box office he sold at the Garden, and they always point to how many times he sold out the Garden. Now, before I get into the bigger legend, I will say in terms of wrestling ability, it's hard, but if you're going to look at wrestling ability, we're not going to just talk in ring. We're going to talk about charisma, personality, and all that stuff. Very few people are going to touch Dusty Rhodes.
I would like to actually attack that Garden thing real quick here.
I was going to get to that, so hold on. I get shot in the gun here. All right, and I know, by the way, some of those, how many times he sold the Garden is somewhat disputed, although there's no disputing that it is a lot and probably more than any wrestler.
No Billy Joel.
Yeah, all right. But, Bruno and Dusty both made you feel they were real. I think Dusty just has a little more charisma, and when you look at his promos, they kind of keep going on, and you look at what Dusty gave back to the industry and what he did with training the kids at NXT, I kind of go with Dusty as overall the bigger legend and the better wrestler. But, God, at least when it comes to the bigger legend and box office, there is an argument for Bruno. AJ wants to attack his MSG record. I don't know why, but go ahead.
First of all, Helen, get me a knife. I'm going to poke some holes in this real quick. First of all, yes, he did sell out MSG, and he continued to sell it out. But what percentage of the New York market actually does it take to sell out MSG? Dusty Rhodes sold out markets in more than one place. Bruno sold out one city. One city with a large arena, and MSG is not even that big of a fucking arena. Here's the other thing. Dusty Rhodes sold out. He took trips around the world and sold out. Now, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. You say Dusty has more charisma. Dusty has more charisma to us. Bruno had just as much charisma to the New York Italian. He was recognizable to them. He was their common man, similar to Dusty was our common man. He was the son of a plumber. Bruno was the son of an immigrant in New York City, even though he lived in Pennsylvania. But he was the son of an immigrant, and he connected with those people in the same way. So I actually disagree. I think they had the same level of charisma. They just didn't have the same level of charisma to us.
We'll throw one other thing out there. I got informed, too, by somebody online that haters will sometimes point out that Bruno was just a regional guy, but he was actually a former Canadian heavyweight champion, too, and got blackballed in Canada because Vince McMahon Sr. was not happy that he was competing there.
So one of the things people might not know, because you might not be familiar with the history of Canada, Canada actually, especially towards Toronto area, has a very large Italian population.
Yeah.
My soon-to-be former father-in-law, he actually, when he came over from Italy, came down through Canada and had to live there first while waiting to become a U.S. citizen. So that was almost like a launching part for people to come into the U.S. So once again, Bruno Sammartino had a very good market there.
So I think we're saying Dusty and Bruno are tied in charisma. We think Dusty might be slightly the better wrestler overall.
I'm actually saying that Dusty actually sold out more places than Bruno. Selling out one arena, it doesn't make you great. Selling out arenas all around the world and even when Dusty wasn't the champ, people would pack arenas around the world to see him.
But it was the Garden, baby. It's the Garden.
I think the Garden is the most overrated place on the planet.
But I will say this: in a shoot fight, I got Bruno all day.
Oh, that's not even close. Bruno Sammartino was one of the strongest human beings. He was a power lifter. Even later in life, when he had trimmed down, he was immensely powerful. He would have killed Dusty.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, not that Dusty was, a weak man by any stretch, but Bruno was a different kind of animal, different kind of powerhouse.
Yeah, that elbow would not have done well against the bear hug.